You're listening to Your Calm Parenting Path. I'm your host Nina, a mindful parenting coach and mum, here to help you go from overwhelmed and reactive to calm, confident and connected with your kids. This show is for parents who want to raise their children with more patience, less stress and a whole lot more joy. Because small shifts make a big impact and you can build the parenting life you've always wanted. If you want to see what I'm up to, follow me on Instagram at Mindful Parenting Lifestyle, and don't forget to hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. Let's get started. Hello, lovely listeners, and welcome back. If you're anything like me, you've probably had moments where you have completely lost your patience over something that later on doesn't even seem that big. Maybe it was the fifth time that you asked your child to put their shoes on. Maybe it was the constant sibling fightings, or maybe bedtime had just dragged on for over an hour and somebody asked for another snack just as you finally sat down. Oh my gosh. In that moment, something in you snapped. You raised your voice, you spoke more harshly than you wanted to. Maybe you saw your child's face fall afterwards, and that image stayed with you. And then later that night, when the house is finally quiet and you're lying in bed, you can't stop replaying it. You feel sick in your stomach. You hear your own tone over and over in your head. You look at your child sleeping peacefully and think, how could I have said that? What's wrong with me? They deserve so much better than this. And underneath all of it, underneath the guilt, is often something heavier. Not just regret about the moment, but fear. Fear that maybe this moment meant more than just a hard moment. Maybe I've already done damage. Maybe my child is going to remember this forever. Maybe I'm becoming the kind of parent I never wanted to be. Maybe one day they'll look back on their childhood and remember me as angry, impatient, or unsafe. Maybe I'm failing them in ways I can't undo. I just want to pause here because I think this is the part we don't talk about enough. Not just the guilt after the hard moments, but the fear underneath it. The private, middle of the night fear that one reaction, one bad day, one season of overwhelm might somehow define our child's entire experience of us. And I want to say something important right now before we go any further. The fact that you're lying awake worrying about this tells me something about you. It tells me you care deeply. It tells me this matters to you. It tells me you are not an uncaring parent. You are almost certainly a deeply loving parent, carrying an enormous amount of pressure to get it right all the time. And that pressure, that relentless internal standard, is something I want to talk about today. Now, that was a very long introduction, but I feel so passionately about sharing this message. Because here's what I've noticed, both in my own parenting and in the parents I work with. When we have a hard moment, when we yell, snap, or say something we regret, most of us don't just feel bad about the moment itself. We put that moment on trial. We become the prosecutor, the witness, and the defendant all at once. We replay it, we analyse it, we build the case. And the verdict is almost always the same. I am failing. Not that moment was hard, not I was overwhelmed and I didn't handle it well, but I am a terrible mother. I think many parents are walking around carrying exactly this, a private collection of moments that they haven't forgiven themselves for, moments that still ache, moments they've filed away as evidence of their inadequacy. And what strikes me about this is how alone it feels, because we don't usually talk about it. We might post the highlight reel, we might laugh about the chaos with friends, but the 2 a.m. spiral, the fear that we're damaging our kids, that tends to stay private. That tends to stay heavy. A while ago, I interviewed Dr. Camille Guilleray for the podcast, And she talked about the difference between guilt and shame. And it still really stays with me. She explained that guilt says, I did something bad, whereas shame says, I am bad. And I think so many of us slide from one into the other without even noticing. Because guilt actually can be useful. It can prompt us to reflect, to repair, to reconnect with our values. But shame tends to do the opposite. Shame shuts us down. It tells us we're hopeless, broken, too far gone to change. And here's the thing about shame. When we believe we're awful parents, we actually become more dysregulated, more reactive, more stuck, not less. Shame doesn't make us better parents. It just makes us feel worse while staying in the same cycle. Now, there's a Buddhist parable that I keep coming back to, and honestly, it's one of those things I've heard many times, and it still stops me in my tracks every single time. The Buddha once asked a student, if a person is struck by an arrow, is it painful? The student replied, yes. The Buddha then asked, if the person is struck by a second arrow, is that even more painful? The student again replied, yes. And the Buddha explained, in life, we cannot always control the first arrow. The first arrow is the painful event, the thing that happened to us. The second arrow is our reaction to the first. The suffering we create through resistance, anger, shame, and self-judgment. The second arrow is optional. And every time I come back to this story, I think about parenting. Because the first arrow is the hard moment itself. The yelling, the snapping, the shutting down. The moment we reacted in a way we wish we hadn't. That first arrow hurts, and it's real. But then comes the second arrow, the replaying, the self-attack, those spiraling thoughts at 2 a.m., the shame, the hours spent convincing ourselves that we're ruining our children. The verdict? I am a terrible mum. I just want to gently say, shooting ourselves with that second arrow does not help us become calmer, more connected parents. It doesn't help us repair. It doesn't help us regulate. It doesn't help us grow. We're already hurting from the first arrow. The second one only deepens the wound. And this is where I think that self-compassion becomes such a powerful practice, not as a way of letting ourselves off the hook, but as a way of putting down that second arrow so that we can actually heal, reflect, and do better. Because when we feel emotionally safe enough to look honestly at our behaviour, we're far more capable of real change. Now, I've talked about self-compassion in previous podcast episodes, and I will link them in the show notes if you wanted to find out more. But self-compassion isn't pretending that the moment was okay. It's being able to say, that didn't go how I wanted, without turning it into, I'm a terrible mother. Because those are two very different things. One creates awareness, the other creates shame. And only one of them leads to growth. Now, I want to share something personal here. Even now, after years of practicing mindful parenting and teaching this work, I still have moments where I react in ways I'm not proud of. And even though part of me knows the tools, knows the theory, knows what to do, there are still evenings when I lie in bed and that inner voice shows up. I should be better at this by now. What if I'm damaging them? I'm such a terrible mum. And what I've learned is that arguing with the voice doesn't usually help. Telling it to stop doesn't help. Trying to logic your way out of it at midnight definitely doesn't help. What does help, at least for me, is simply noticing it, naming it, and then gently offering myself the same kind of words that I'd offer a friend. Not false reassurance, not like, you're doing amazing, don't worry, it's fine. But honest kindness. Something like, oh man, Neens, that was a hard day. You were running on empty. Or you didn't handle that the way you wanted, and that matters to you. That actually says something good about you. You can repair, you can try again. You are not defined by one moment. And if you find that the feelings are really sticky, if the guilt or shame just won't shift no matter what you try, I want to point you towards episode 25 of Your Calm Parenting Path, where I walk through a mindfulness process called RAIN. It's something I come back to again and again in my own practice, and honestly, it's one of my favourite tools in this whole body of work. RAIN stands for Recognize, Allow, Investigate, and Nurture. And it's one of the most gentle and effective processes I know for moving through difficult emotions rather than getting stuck underneath them. It was popularised by the wonderful Tara Brach, and the reason I love it so much is that it doesn't ask you to push the feeling away or fix it. It just asks you to be with it with kindness. And if what we've talked about today has stirred something up for you, episode 25 is a beautiful next step. Again, the link will be in the show notes. And one thing that feels really important to say directly in this episode is that children are not traumatised by parents who sometimes lose their patience. They're shaped by the overall experience of their relationship with you, by whether they feel loved, by whether you come back after hard moments, by whether they see you take responsibility, apologise and try again. Research on attachment tells us that children don't need perfect parents. They need good enough parents. Parents who get it right often enough and who repair when they don't. The repair matters more than the rupture. What you do after matters more than the moment itself. And you are here, listening to this, caring about this. That repair is already in motion. Because here's what I keep coming back to. Your worst parenting moment is not the full story of who you are. A hard moment tells you that you're human, that you're stretched, that you need something you didn't have in that moment. It does not tell you that you're hopeless. It does not tell you that your child's whole experience of you rests on that one hard night. You are so much more than your worst moment, and your child knows that too. You need to know it. So here's your small shift for big impact this week. The next time you have a hard parenting moment, and I'm sure you will, if you hear that inner voice start up, I want you to try just one thing. Notice the very first thing you say to yourself. Just notice it. Don't try to change it yet. Just listen to the words. And then ask yourself, would I speak to another overwhelmed parent this way? Would I say this to a friend who came to me after a hard day? And if the answer is no, see if you can soften it just slightly. Not because the moment didn't matter, but because you matter too. The way you speak to yourself after hard moments, that shapes how you show up for the next one. Before we finish today, I also want to let you know that I'm opening up a few free 30-minute connection calls for parents who are carrying guilt or shame after hard parenting moments. This episode might have triggered something inside you that you just need to get out. This is a gentle, supportive space where we can unpack what happened together, explore what might have been going on underneath, and look at ways to move forward with more compassion and confidence. Sometimes we just need someone to help us see the moment through a different lens. And if that sounds like something you need right now, you can book through the link in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here today. You don't need to become a perfect parent to build a connected relationship with your child. You just need honesty, repair, and a willingness to keep growing. Small shifts really do make big impact. I'll speak to you next time on Your Calm Parenting Path. Thanks for listening to Your Calm Parenting Path. I am so glad you're here, and I hope this episode gave you something useful to take into your parenting journey. If you'd like to dive deeper, sign up to my mailing list at mindfulparentinglifestyle.com.au for more tips and insights, or book a free chat to learn how we can work together. And don't forget to hit follow or subscribe so you never miss an episode. I look forward to speaking with you next time on Your Calm Parenting Path.